Guy Penrod has always been more than just a singer. To millions of people around the world, his voice became a source of peace, hope, and inspiration. From his early days with the Gaither Vocal Band to his solo career, he carried gospel music with such passion that listeners felt every word deep in their hearts. His long hair, warm smile, and powerful stage presence made him stand out. But what truly defined him was the sincerity in his songs. He didn't just perform, he ministered through music. Every note he sang carried faith, every lyric carried a testimony, and every concert felt like a prayer shared between him and his audience. For years, Guy dedicated himself completely to his calling. He spent countless hours on the road, singing in churches, arenas, and gatherings where people came seeking hope. His songs lifted broken hearts, gave courage to the weak, and reminded everyone of the power of God's love. Yet behind this legendary voice was also a man with his own private life, his own family, and his own personal journey that many never truly saw. While the world admired the gospel legend, very few knew the man behind the music. And that man, the one who gave so much of himself to his ministry and to his fans, is now beginning a new chapter in life. One that has not only touched him deeply, but has also moved his wife, Angie Clark, to finally break her silence. Behind every great man, there is often someone whose presence may not always be seen on the stage, but is deeply felt in his journey. For Guy Penrod, that person has always been his wife, Angie Clark. While the world cheered for Guy's powerful voice and inspiring songs, Angie quietly stood in the background, offering the strength, patience, and love that kept their family together. She was not the one under the bright lights, but she was the one who held everything steady when the lights faded away. Angie's role in Guy's life was not small or secondary. She was his partner in every sense of the word, his confidant, his comforter, and the one who reminded him of the man he truly was outside of fame. When long tours kept him away from home, Angie made sure their children felt secure and loved. When the pressures of ministry and music weighed heavily on him, she was the one who listened late into the night, speaking words of encouragement when he needed them most. What made Angie unique was her ability to remain humble and grounded despite being married to one of gospel music's most celebrated voices. She never chased attention or demanded recognition. Instead, she found her purpose in being the quiet strength Guy could always lean on. To the public, Guy was the legend. To Angie, he was her husband, the father of their children, and the man she chose to walk with through every season of life. For many years, Angie chose silence, staying away from interviews and public conversations because her heart believed in protecting their family's private world. But now, as Guy steps into a new phase of life, Angie has decided it is time to speak, not for fame, not for attention, but to share the truth of their journey and to let people know the heart behind the legend. Every journey has moments that change the course of life forever. For Guy Penrod and Angie Clark, that turning point came quietly but carried great weight. After decades of traveling, singing, and living in the constant rhythm of ministry, Guy began to feel a shift within his heart. The long nights on the road, the endless schedule of performances, and the demands of always being in the public eye started to take a toll. For the first time, the man who had spent his life pouring out strength through music began to realize he needed strength for himself. It wasn't one single event that changed everything, but a series of moments that built up over time. The fatigue of constant touring, the longing to spend more time with family, and the desire to slow down all became impossible to ignore. Guy, who had always put others first, finally had to face the truth that he could not continue in the same way forever. It was a difficult realization because music was not just his career, it was his calling. But deep down, he knew that even callings can enter new seasons. For Angie, watching her husband reach this turning point was emotional. She had seen his sacrifices, his sleepless nights, and the way he carried the weight of ministry with humility. She knew the time had come for a change, not because Guy had lost his love for music, but because God was leading him into a new way of living, a life that would focus more on health, family, and peace. This moment was not the end of Guy's story, but the beginning of a new chapter. And it was in this season of change that Angie felt something stirring in her heart too. She had kept quiet for so many years, but now, as her husband stepped into a new life, she felt it was time to share their truth with the world. For years, Angie Clark chose silence. She preferred to stay behind the scenes, protecting the private world she and Guy built together. She never felt the need to step into the spotlight, because in her heart, her place was by her husband's side, not in front of the cameras or headlines. But when Guy's life began to change and a new chapter unfolded, Angie felt something she had never felt before, the need to speak. Her decision was not sudden. It was born from long nights of prayer, quiet reflection, and watching her husband take brave steps toward a different life. Angie realized that fans around the world, who had supported Guy through every stage of his career, deserved to know the truth. They deserved to understand the man beyond the stage lights, the one who was learning to embrace peace, family, and a slower pace of life. Angie felt a responsibility to share that story with honesty and love. But her reason went deeper than just explaining Guy's new season. She wanted people to see that even legends are human. She wanted them to understand that behind the powerful voice they admired was a man who also needed rest, healing, and renewal. By breaking her silence, Angie hoped to remind fans that life is not always about staying in the spotlight. It's also about listening to God's timing and accepting change with grace. Her voice trembled the first time she spoke publicly, but it carried a truth that touched hearts. She wasn't speaking as the wife of a gospel star. She was speaking as a woman of faith, a wife, and a partner who had walked every step of this journey alongside her husband. For Angie, it was not about telling the world everything. It was about sharing just enough to let people see the beauty of their story and the hope that still shines in their lives. When Angie Clark finally opened her heart, she didn't only talk about the blessings and the joy of life with Guy Penrod. She also shared the struggles, the unseen battles that few people ever knew about. To the world, Guy's career looked beautiful, bright lights, adoring fans, and a voice that touched souls. But behind those lights were challenges that tested their faith and their marriage. There were times when the long tours felt endless. Weeks of being apart created loneliness, especially when the children were young and needed their father at home. Angie carried the weight of being both mother and father during those times, making sure the household remained stable, even when her own heart ached for Guy's presence. She often smiled in public, but privately she prayed through tears, asking God for strength to keep going. Financial pressure also showed up in the early years, when their family was still finding stability. Not every concert or project brought in enough to cover the needs of a growing household. Angie remembered cutting back, planning carefully, and trusting that God would provide. And He did. But those moments reminded her that even gospel legends faced the same struggles as ordinary families. Then there was the pressure of fame. Being in the public eye meant people had opinions, expectations, and sometimes harsh criticism. Angie often shielded Guy from the stain of those words, reminding him that his calling was greater than the voices of doubt. Still, it hurt to know that behind every song he poured his heart into, there were always critics waiting to pull him down. Through all these struggles, Angie said their faith was the anchor, prayer became their lifeline, and love became their shelter. She reflected with honesty that while their journey looked perfect from the outside, it was built on many tears, many prayers, and countless moments of holding on when life felt heavy. These struggles, she said, were not signs of weakness but proof of God's strength carrying them through. When Angie began to describe Guy's new life, her words carried both peace and gratitude. After so many years of constant movement, endless concerts, and the heavy responsibility of ministry on the road, Guy had finally stepped into a slower, more meaningful season. It wasn't a retirement from music. It was a rebirth of life itself. These days, Guy spends more time at home, surrounded by the laughter and warmth of his family. Instead of rushing from one city to the next, he wakes up to mornings filled with quiet devotion, coffee at the kitchen table, and moments that once slipped away unnoticed. He walks through the fields near their home, listens to the sound of nature, and takes joy in the simple beauty of life that fame and travel once made hard to enjoy. Spiritually, his life has also deepened. Guy still sings, but now his songs are not bound by stages or schedules. He sings for his grandchildren, for small gatherings, and sometimes just in the stillness of his home. His voice, though as powerful as ever, now carries a new gentleness, a reflection of a man who has found peace with himself and with God's timing. Angie explained that his ministry, his health, and well-being have also become a priority. Years on the road can wear down even the strongest person, but now Guy is taking care of himself in ways he once neglected. He spends time resting, eating well, and enjoying a balance that allows him to feel renewed. Angie said she sees a different light in his eyes now, one that tells her he is truly at peace. This new life, Angie shared, is not about leaving behind the past, but about embracing the present. It's about honoring the years of service while also allowing space for rest, family, and faith to take center stage. To her, it is the most beautiful chapter yet because it is filled with the things that matter most: love, faith, and the quiet joy of simply being together. Angie Clark's presence in Guy Penrod's transformation has been nothing short of vital. While Guy may be the one whose life shifted so visibly, Angie was the steady hand that helped guide him through it. For years, she had quietly carried the burdens that came with his career, the long absences, the emotional strain, and the never-ending demands. But when the time came for change, it was Angie who encouraged him to embrace it without fear. She was the first to notice the toll the constant traveling was taking on him. His shoulders carried exhaustion, his spirit longed for peace, and his heart yearned for home. Instead of pushing him to continue, Angie reminded him that it was okay to slow down, that stepping back wasn't failure but wisdom. Her gentle words gave Guy the courage to see that his worth was not measured by how many concerts he sang, but by the life he lived and the love he gave. Throughout this transformation, Angie never once sought recognition. Her role was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, consistent, and filled with faith. She prayed with him when he was unsure of what direction to take. She reassured him when he doubted if people would still accept him outside of the spotlight. She reminded him that his voice was a gift, yes, but his presence as a husband, father, and grandfather was an even greater blessing. Angie also became his partner in building this new season of life. Together, they created a rhythm that valued family time, faith-filled conversations, and peaceful days over schedules and stages. It was her steady faith that helped Guy embrace this new chapter not as an ending, but as a beautiful continuation of the story God was writing for them. When Angie spoke about her role, she didn't boast. Instead, she said it was her honor to walk beside her husband in every season, the hard years, the busy years, and now the years of peace. Her love and faith were the anchors that allowed Guy to find his true balance, and without her, this transformation may never have been possible. When Angie Clark finally chose to speak, one of the first things she wanted to share was a heartfelt message to the fans who had stood with Guy through every chapter of his life. With a gentle voice and words full of gratitude, she thanked them for the countless prayers, letters, and encouragement they had given over the years. She said that every smile in the audience, every hand lifted in worship, and every kind word had carried Guy through even the most exhausting days. Angie reminded the fans that they were not just listeners, they were part of Guy's journey. She explained how deeply their support had touched their family, especially during times when life behind the scenes was not easy. She shared that Guy often spoke of his audience as friends, not strangers, because their faith and love created a bond that went beyond music. But Angie also wanted to reassure them. She understood that many wondered what Guy's new life meant for his future in gospel music. With honesty and tenderness, she explained that while Guy's schedule might look different, his heart for ministry had not changed. He still carried the same passion for sharing God's love, but now it was expressed in quieter, more personal ways. She wanted the fans to know that his voice, his spirit, and his message were still alive, just in a new form. She also spoke about the importance of embracing change with faith. To the fans who might feel